I was seeing vaccinated Canadian doctors dying suddenly at a much higher rate. I'm one of the very few doctors on the planet who are using antiparasitics to help cancer patients. The cancer makers, I should say the vaccine makers, they are cancer makers. Now, we were lied about the COVID vaccine. We were told it's an injection, it stays in your arm, it teaches your immune system how to fight COVID, and the mRNA breaks down after a few hours, few days, and after it's taught your immune system and it's gone. That was one of the biggest lies. She's discovering that the immune systems of virtually everybody who had the COVID-19 vaccine deteriorate over time, and they end up with a picture that looks like AIDS.
I'm so grateful to have Dr. Makis here. Welcome to Truth Be Told.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I escaped communist Czechoslovakia in 1988 with my family, and I didn't know that we were leaving communism because, being a small kid, I was 9 years old, and my parents didn't want to say anything just in case I said something at school, and then my dad would be thrown in prison. That's right. And so, you never anticipate that communism is going to fall, the next year or something like that. And so I was fortunate enough to grow up in Canada, and it's been such a tragedy to watch what's happened to Canada over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's horrible. And for you in particular, you would see the parallels. So those that have been watching for a while know that I have lived and worked in 2 communist countries. In fact, in the United States, you also can't get your day in court. There is no redress in the act of killing your own citizens. And that's where I arrive, that there is no other way to conclude but that they knew that these shots were intentionally poisonous, and they did it anyway. This was a plan. So having said all of that, I'm interested in your perspective, but I really want to spend some time after you share your thinking on all of that, and what got you to this point where you had to go look for alternative treatments and find the answers.
Yeah, the cover-up of the COVID vaccine injuries and deaths has been really stunning to watch over the past 5 years, because they keep doubling down. We see politicians keep doubling down, or maybe they quietly disappear, like Jacinda Ardern. She does her damage, and then she quietly tries to disappear. We've seen it with health officials, Rachel Walensky, Anthony Fauci. I mean, they quietly walked away.
Where'd they go?
Enjoying their retirement. And one thing I want to mention, which has been fascinating recently, especially in the past year, is we are seeing more and more studies coming out linking the COVID vaccines to cancers, aggressive cancers. We're calling them turbo cancers. We now have case reports, one out of Japan, of patients who had tumors develop after taking a bunch of mRNA vaccines, where the spike protein from the vaccine is found in the tumor, where genetic sequences from the Pfizer vaccine are identified and in the tumor itself, in the cancer cells.
Well, let's talk about that, because what we came to understand in our own litigation, we litigated this for years, that the SV40, an immortal cancerous cell lining, was put into the shots, all of them. They knew this was a plan. And if you understand the global dynamics of the 1994 Cairo Population Accords, where they said we can't have more than 8 billion people on this planet, we got to get rid of 7 billion. In the military, we saw an 1,100% increase in all-cause morbidity and mortality. This is right, the healthiest population in the U.S., the most regulated population in the United States for purposes of physical endurance and their status. From 18 to 45, 1,100% increase for 10 months in 2021 over all prior years. In other words, from the time they started the shots to the end of the year, they had an 1,100% increase. So, and I'm curious what it is you're seeing before we get to the treatments that you're using. But this isn't occasional turbo cancer. This is pancreatic cancer. This is lung cancer. It's breast cancer where the woman had her breast removed. How does cancer arrive in breast tissue that doesn't exist? Do you have a sense for what the rate actually is?
I don't. And I can tell you what's particularly scary is when you look at the cancer makers, I should say the vaccine makers. They are
Well,
cancer
they are
makers
cancer makers.
as
Yeah.
well. When you look at Albert Bourla, for example, I mean, he's been very vocal in telling us that 1/3 of the global population is going to get cancer. And that's just, for him, that's a
And he
fact.
knows that.
I can tell you, I wasn't the first one to, notice or bring up the idea about these aggressive cancers, turbo cancers arising in the vaccinated. I would give credit for that to a couple of doctors. There was a couple of pathologists in Germany, Dr. Ute Kruger, Dr. Arne Burkhardt. They noticed it in their work, pathology work. Dr. Ryan Cole in the United States started talking about seeing an increase of cancers in his lab back in 2022. In September of 2022, I sent a letter to the Canadian Medical Association notifying them that I was seeing vaccinated Canadian doctors dying suddenly at a much higher rate. And in fact, the rate that we had calculated for the youngest doctors, the excess mortality rate was about an 1100% increase. And we're seeing just this tsunami of aggressive cancers. And thank God the research is finally starting to catch up and confirm what we've been seeing.
So I apologize to you and the audience for kind of laughing while you were talking and walking us through the amount of investment in these cancer drugs from the drug cartels. And I apologize. It's because I cured my own cancer for about $20 using chlorine dioxide. I had bladder cancer, and it was picked up in my my preoperative exam. I knew I had it. It's pretty hard to miss when blood is coming out, right?
Yeah. Fortunately, it does. The antiparasitics are absolutely fascinating, and I'm still shocked that I'm one of the very few doctors on the planet who are using antiparasitics to help cancer patients. Well, I want people to realize that with these antiparasitics, using them for cancer, that's called repurposing, and you can refer to them as repurposed drugs. You're repurposing something that was designed for one thing. And once you realize that it's really successful for something else, you start using it for something else. That's called repurposing. Now, when you're using antiparasitics for cancer, the dose is higher than the dose you would use to treat parasites or to treat COVID. So I give just a rule of thumb for ivermectin, for example. It's about 5 times the dose that you would need for cancer, about 5 to 10 times the dose than if you were just treating parasites or viruses. Now, this is important because cancer stem cells are the reason chemotherapy doesn't work. When you have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, stage 4 ovarian cancer, and you go to your oncologist, they will tell you, we will give you chemo, but we can't cure you. It's palliative chemo. It'll buy you an extra 6 months, an extra 12 months of life. So if you're going to add or use antiparasitics for cancer, and we're seeing dramatic results, come as early as you can.
Cordelia, I know we're short on time. Do you have time for one quick question before we leave the doctor?
Yes, I do. What would you say to the people who think this won't affect them because maybe they're young, they're healthy, especially college students? We're always like, oh, we're healthy. It's fine. It's not going to affect us. We're not going to get these turbo cancers. We're not going to get sick because of all of these vaccines we've taken. What would you say to those people?
All right. So I got to tell you that there is long-term effects of these vaccines that are sometimes showing up years later. And there's 2 things I'll tell you about. One is there's spike protein production that is ongoing for years. Now, we were lied about the COVID vaccine. We were told it's an injection, it stays in your arm, it teaches your immune system how to fight COVID, and the mRNA breaks down after a few hours, few days, and after it's taught your immune system and it's gone. That was one of the biggest lies. And so what we're finding now, I'm working with an amazing doctor out of Florida, Dr. Maravik Villa, who's actually been testing the immune systems of thousands of patients in Florida who've had COVID vaccines. And you know what she's discovering? She's discovering that the immune systems of virtually everybody who had the COVID-19 vaccine deteriorate over time. And they end up with a picture that looks like AIDS. That really looks like
vaccine-induced AIDS. By the way, doctor, I'm going to rest my case now. We're out of time, but I do want you to know that the ingredients we found included 3 HIV proteins in all of the shots. So should we be surprised?
And those papers were suppressed. I think they forced to withdraw one of those papers. The HIV sequences in the spike protein sequence is another. It's just
They're
an
there.
shell. Yeah.
They did it on purpose. They gave everybody vaccine-induced AIDS. Cordelia, to you, thank you. Doctor, real quick, fast, how do people follow you? How do they find you?
People can find me on Twitter at Makis Medicine and Substack, makisw.substack.com. And you can also email me, info@makisw.com.
Man, you are such a blessing to us all. Thank you for giving us your valuable time. 7,000 people seeking your time and attention, and you gave it to us. God bless you. We're going to get this out everywhere. Important people watch this, decision makers. We're going to make sure that they see this. God bless you for your efforts. Thank you for being here, and Godspeed, brother.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
My honor.